Is everybody ready to kick off the meeting? Okay, take it away, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Mayor Randy Hine. I was elected in 2024 after the passing of former Mayor Terry Briggs. I served on council for 12 years prior to that. Thanks for being here, and I know we're all interested in hearing some new information. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dawn. Dawn, you want to introduce people?
So my name is Dawn Chapman. I'm chair of the technical CAG, which is what this is. This is Karen Nickel. You want to introduce yourself? Chair of the CAG.
I'm chair of the Westlake CAG.
So what we're going to do really briefly is we're going to go around the room briefly. Tell us your name, who you're with, that sort of thing. And then I do want to make everybody aware, Bryce waved everybody. There is a member of press in the room. That's not typically what we do, but that's what we're doing today. So welcome, Bryce. But I do want to make everyone aware that he is here. After we do introductions, I'm going to make a motion to close the CAG and open the TCAG and hand it to Tom. So if we'll start right here, sir.
Thank
Thank you for being here.
My name is Porter Volk, and I'm also with the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services.
Josh Martin, Missouri Department of Natural Resources, and I'm based out of our St. Louis Regional Office.
Aaron Anthony with St. Louis County Department of Public Health. Debbie Disser with Just Moms STL.
Kristen Caruso, Missouri Coalition for Connected.
Jim Street, Fire Chief, Federal Fire District.
Tanya Sri, Just Moms STL.
Karen Nickel, co-founder Just Moms STL, chair of Westlake CAG.
Dawn and Mayor.
I'm David Bestro. I'm with Pattonville School District.
Good afternoon, Kim Baker with SSN Health, DePaul, Pennsylvania.
And Ashley Brunel, I'm with the North County CAP.
Kevin Adkins, I'm the Region 7 Superfund Remediation Branch Manager.
Jessica Evans with EPA Region 7. Just a quick note, we are recording this, so the little black squares on some of the tables, those are just to pick up the audio, so. Thank you.
Tracy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, Tracy Betty, Secretary of Just Moms.
Richard Callow for the Public Services. Matt Stewart, I'm the Team Environmental Manager at the Bridgeton Landfill.
Danielle Spadley with the St. Louis County Executive's Office.
And I'm Jake Zimmerman, and I'm the St. Louis County Assessor.
And Bryce Gray with Post Dispatch.
I'm Snake Bucket. I'm the Region 7 RPM for Operable Unit 3 at Westlake.
And I'm Tom Baylor. I'm also RPM with Region 7 on Operable Unit 1 and 2.
Okay, welcome everyone to the TCAG. With that, I'd like to make a motion to close the official CAG meeting and move to the TCAG. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, Tom, take it away.
Great. Snee's actually gonna start us off today.
Okay.
We figured it'd probably be better to go through the groundwater stuff first, but we will definitely make sure we get through everything that came out in today's update and what's going on with OU1. So, Snee, I figure out how to advance. There we go.
Right, so as Tom said, we'll start with OU3 and then we'll hop to OU1 and 2 and then finally finish up with.
You know what, really quick, I forgot one housekeeping rule. Snade, would you prefer that we hold questions to the end or ask during? It's up to you.
I think maybe at the end.
Tom, I'll ask you the same when it's your turn.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
We have Loranda Wilson walking in also with Congressman Wesley Belt.
Hi, Mom.
So just a quick overview of the site. It's made up of 3 operable units. OU1 is areas that have radiologically impacted material. OU2 is the other parts of the landfill that do not have RIM. And then OU3 is site-wide groundwater, which sort of applies to all of the areas within the footprint of the landfill. So today, I'm just going to briefly give you a summary of what field work has been happening or has happened since we last met in August of 2004. We had an open house. 24, sorry, not 2004. And then just a brief overview of the work that's been completed and underway. There's some fairly new developments there. Talk about next steps. then we'll go over some of the groundwater results, and then we're gonna talk about a beta dashboard. This is a different dashboard than what you all have been used to seeing on the Westlake website. So this is new and different as well. Next slide, please. All right, so here is the current monitoring well network. You can see the outline of the landfill there. The on-site wells are labeled with different colors. You have blue, green, purple, pink, I guess. We've sort of omitted everything inside the landfill just for clarity, but some of the perimeter wells are shown. So there's a definite pattern here where the colors stand for basically the relative time when each well was installed. With blue and green are the earliest wells that were put in, and then we go to purple and then to pink. So over the last year and a half, it's been primarily the pink wells farther out that have been installed, and also the one location with the box with the arrow. Those were more recently put in last fall. So MW 515. So you can see the general pattern. Oldest wells or the first wells are put in close to the site. And then you successively step out. So this is sort of a standard way of doing groundwater investigations at big complex sites. You step out. It's a data-driven approach. It's a little more efficient than sort of Swiss cheesing the whole place and hope you find everything. So this is a little more systematic way of doing it. So 5 offsite locations since August of 24, and it's a total of 12 wells. Some of the locations have only 1 well, but others have, as you can see, 3, sometimes more in the green. And they're all at different depths, so not just delineating horizontally, but vertically as well, in the river sediments as well as in the bedrock. In the upper right, just pointing out that there are 6 background wells at the site. They're located east and south and southwest of the site. And the purpose of the background wells is to sort of assess what you see in the groundwater that can't be attributed to the site. And as we'll talk about later, that's an important distinction, because then that allows you to then assess what is attributable to the site. So you got to know what's not attributed to the site and what's in the area, so that you can see what might be coming from the site. Next, please. So work complete and underway. So the most recent annual report, which was submitted in spring of 2005, that's completed. That's available on the website for download. Groundwater sampling, of course, quarterly is ongoing. And then there's also monthly well gauging and measurement of the water levels in many of the surface water bodies, the ponds, primarily in Earth City. Dashboard updates. Now, this is not the beta dashboard, but it's the dashboard that you all are familiar with. Has all the latest updates on 1, 2, and 3. It has interactive map, and many of you are probably familiar with that. So that gets updated periodically once we get more information in the door. The groundwater modeling work plan. This is something that's required for the PRPs to do that. That work plan is in progress. We're currently waiting for a revised work plan, which we will review. And then the PRPs will carry out the modeling itself. The baseline risk assessment has also begun. Some of the modeling work will feed into that. So it's still in its early stages, but the contractors are working on that. And finally, but last not least, this is something we're sort of excited to see. There is a preliminary RI, a remedial investigation report that's being prepared. We're going to get that by the end of June. So EPA had, up until now, we've been getting annual reports, which is basically a summary of all the work that's been done at the site in the past year roughly. And those were important. It kind of kept everybody up to date, but it didn't tie together all the information in a way that, you know, you could use. So the RI report is going to do several things. It's going to refine our current understanding of the hydrogeological regime. It will evaluate the background water quality, as we just discussed. It's going to delineate or determine the extent of the groundwater impacts. And it's also going to assess the source or sources of the groundwater impact. And lastly, with respect to risk, it's going to evaluate the current and future risks that are associated with the groundwater impacts. So we're looking forward to receiving that and providing feedback. And that's an important milestone. So at that point, you know, we'll have once we've seen the report and had a chance to digest it, we'll have a better bead on, you know, what the schedule, what's going to happen next and when. So stay tuned, please.
So, but before we move on, this is kind of this wasn't a report that we originally set out to do, and I want to make sure what Stan is trying to get across is coming through here. There will eventually be a final RI, which for those of you that know about the circular process, this is a critical document. Pulls together the conceptual site model and everything about what is contamination, where is contamination. Because this site is complex, that's taking a lot of data. And as we've stepped out, basically that sort of hits the reset button a bit because we've got to collect more samples from those further out wells and incorporate it into that. That process has been taking a while. And we feel like the best way to sort of get ourselves on a path of getting this done is to take all this data that has been collected for these last several years. And the PRPs have agreed to basically attempt to write an RI. But we know that they won't be able to answer all the RI questions for this site. But this gives us an opportunity to get those remaining data gaps defined and us all get on the same page about what that is and kind of strike a path forward to get to the end. So really wanted to make sure that we talk about that. It's not that far away. It's coming in June. And so we'll finally have, I think we won't have all the answers, but more definitive to share about what the data that we have so far means after we get this report and what is left to do.
That was my question. Will you be able to come back to this group with the preliminary? Or that's not something you guys will hold on to and say, well, we need to wait for the other gaps to be filled?
No.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll be able to come in.
That will be published and yeah.
okay. So we will, as soon as they'll let us know that they're ready, we'll go ahead and schedule another one of these meetings in this room like we're doing right now and go over it.
Yeah. And just to underscore what Tom was saying, it is preliminary because it will not have the risk assessment. We know that will come later. That will be part of the final RI.
Sure.
And that's a key component of an RI report is the risk assessment. And it also the preliminary won't have the results of the groundwater modeling, but the final RI will.
Okay. A comment and a question, and then we'll open it for questions. Sneh, if you're okay, real quick. So, seeing all those testing locations way far off site, although you guys did a good job explaining where you're going for background, I think that's going to create some unease. So just want you guys to be aware and just think internally of how you're going to talk about that to people and the need to kind of really, because that looks pretty far off. I know all of us were kind of like, ooh, but I'm glad to see that you're doing them. My question is, we're hearing a lot about drought conditions. What, if any, role does that play in water samples? Does it make samples more concentrated? Are you able to get,
Potentially, yeah, if you have less water, I mean, it's a seasonal thing as well. Concentrations can vary with season, with river stage. That's an
Sure.
important thing. You're right there at the river and we know, every spring and summer, well, the river rises. So it's hard to say, the drought and the rising river, longer term. Generally, yes, if you have less water, you would have a more concentrated effect.
And you'll be able to differentiate that, I guess, by seasonal testing, by being able to see what your testing showed 3 months, 4 months previously in that well.
Yeah, it would all be wrapped up in
Okay.
the seasonal variation, and I think the type of change you're talking about too with climate, and I don't know if that's part of what.
No, just, I mean, we're hearing a lot about us being in drought conditions still and, the ground being dry, especially last summer. I'm just trying to get ahead of any questions like that as to what role that could play, if any.
And we're not
Maybe
really
not.
seeing yet any like significant downward
Okay.
trends of water levels. I mean, we measure monthly in these wells. So there's manual gauging, and then there's also instrumentation in a lot of the wells that just automatically records water levels. So
Good.
we haven't really seen any those kinds of effects from the drought.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions before we move to Tom?
Oh, he has.
Yes.
Well, I'm not done yet.
Yeah, he has.
Make it fast. Okay, next please.
Would you prefer us to just go with OU1 first? You guys usually ask for an update about.
No,
That's fine.
I think OU1's the
Keep
good
going.
news.
Yeah.
So let's save the good news for last. I'm not saying this isn't good news, but I mean, this is kind of making anxiety go up a little bit,
Okay, so next steps. So after the preliminary RI report, then we move to final, and it'll include the groundwater modeling, and more importantly, or just as importantly, the risk assessment. And then finally, after the RI is complete, final RI, feasibility study is going to look at potential options for remediating the groundwater. It'll present all those options and pick one if needed. Next, please. All right, so just some quick, you're not going to be able to read everything on there, and we have maps on the wall of these figures. So actually, they're more expanded, but they show the legend. This is recent concentrations of 1,4-dioxane in alluviums. Okay, so dioxane, not dioxin, which is a completely different animal. That's the stuff that was at Times Beach. We're not Times Beach here. So again, the footprint of the landfill, the
Alluvium, these are shallower groundwater sinks.
yes, so the river sediments that the Missouri River has brought down. So the concentrations depend, the size of the dots, the bigger dots, colored dots, lighter shades are lower concentration. In this case, it's the lightest shade is less than 30 micrograms per liter, and then the intermediate blue is 30 to 300, and a dark blue is over 300. And the black and gray small dots are non-detects. Again, these are all on the wall, so you can take a better look. But in general, you're seeing a pattern where there are impacts, and we're seeing them near the river. In the shallow
The
sediment.
ones
Right?
they did.
And so this figure is taken from the 2004 annual report, 2024.
Yeah.
I don't know what I got about 2004. 2024 annual report. So that's something that's been out for about a year now, a little over a year, a little less than a year. So we're seeing impacts in the alluvium. Again, the preliminary RI report is going to go into more depth about what this means, where it might be coming from, and also where it might be going.
Real quick, we always, whenever we give you an update on OU3, we end up talking about 1,4-dioxane. And I just want to remind, the reason that we start with that is because that is our most mobile contaminant. It's very miscible. It basically moves almost exactly with the water. And it has allowed, it's basically what drives where the well network needs to step out. It's the thing that's going to go the farthest.
Okay.
So just how we has kind of this very scientific name, but we always start with this because this is kind of our and the PRP's driver for where to put wells next.
And you think you have identified that dioxane, the most water soluble of these contaminants, that the source of that is Westlake landfill?
So
Or
we're,
you don't know, you're just tracing it because it's what you're finding and it has the most capability to move.
yeah, we see it at the edge of the landfill. But it is a chemical that is associated with various industrial activities. So a big thing that's being looked at with this preliminary RI is what are all the possible sources? But we do see it at the edge of the landfill,
I
so
see it.
it makes sense to use as a contaminant for driving where we put wells. But the final conclusions on like how much and which specific well, that's all being, worked on for this preliminary.
Could you go over the colors again? The light blues are kind of sort of there a little bit,
Light is lower concentrations.
but it is there.
Darker is higher.
And then the black is non-detect,
Black, some
because
of
that's awfully close to the river. I mean. Okay,
Yeah, so the PRPs are looking at that in terms of their modeling right now.
At your
how they deal
firehouse?
with, Weather stuff is
Yes.
making it to the river, going under, all of that.
going under the river?
Groundwater. And groundwater. Yeah.
Well, shit. Okay.
It's not something we have an answer to yet, but it's definitely going to be looked at.
I feel like we were told 5 years ago it couldn't do that, so.
Well, we're gonna talk about
Okay.
radium and
Mhm.
and the rad. Different things. It doesn't, it's a metal. It doesn't move like one four
Go under the
dioxane,
river.
which is a good thing. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not a soluble, or it's soluble under specific conditions.
Okay,
Next slide, please. Again, this is bedrock, 1,4-dioxane in
Yep.
bedrock. You see it's in general, lower concentrations and not as far down gradient, not as far northwest and north of the landfill. Again, you can get a better sense of the actual concentrations, but same color scheme for the concentrations here. Next, please.
we were told they couldn't go under the river.
So this is radium, 226 and 228 in the same alluvial wells in the
No, I
the
know.
river
but
sediment
I have
wells.
to say, I have to-
So here the green circles, bigger means more concentrations, higher concentration. And the black and gray means not detected. So again, the smallest sized circle means it's less than 5 picocuries per liter. The MCL, the drinking water MCL for combined radium 226 and 228 is 5 picocuries per liter. The intermediate size circles are between 5 and 10, I believe, picocuries per liter, and then the biggest
Can't see 'em.
size is greater than 10. So you see those clustered at the perimeter of the landfill, and the general pattern is that it gets smaller as you move toward the river, with these concentrations generally falling below 5 picocuries per liter.
Just for clarity, could you run your cursor down through 141 or City Expressway and the Rock Road, just so we kind of have
Yeah.
the topography here?
So, yeah, let me first.
That's
So
the fire.
the Rock Road
Isn't it?
is this right here. I'm not sure where 141.
It's on the other side.
Right.
Right.
There.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Right.
Yep, right there.
Yeah, it's north and south.
Or City Expressway, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
yeah, that's what I was like, is that, okay, but yeah, so Rock Road here and then the City Expressway, I guess it's down here.
What's the reading in that well right there that you were just hovering on? What's that reading in that well right there?
2.89 in the upper 5.97 in the middle and 1.79 in the lower.
Yeah, so like circles, I had to stretch the image to
Okay.
try to make it a little bigger, so there's not a true perspective.
So, and keep in mind, these are our background wells. And so obviously we're gonna have detections of radium. It is a naturally occurring material in groundwater. This particular sampling event, the concentrations are between about 1 and 4.8. But we have had, background samples, specific samples come back between 5 and 10. Doesn't happen every time, not always at the same well, but we have had some that are above the MCL. So when we have, these dots like this MW 516. So this particular result was 5.93. That's an example of something that in the preliminary RI, we'll be trying to understand, could a concentration like that be something above background, or is that what we would expect? And,
Where's that?
Yeah, what company is there?
do you know where in our
You mean
city?
the street address
Yeah,
or,
anything
is
around?
that on Ryder Trail maybe?
Yeah. it doesn't-
Sounds like clear one.
I don't know, but I can get that for you. You need to. It might be
Yeah.
more, apparent on the larger maps.
But I think, just so you know how we have to look at this data, what it means for now is that these results for some of these wells are close enough, what we're seeing in the background wells, that we can't like straightforwardly make a determination that we even have an impact yet. That's coming soon. And also, best way to say this, there's a lot more radium in this site, like in the landfills, than what this concentration is in groundwater. So, and I think you've heard when Chris has been here in the past, she's made statements about how when she first started working on this site and we got into groundwater, there was at least an expectation, since these are unmined landfills, that we might have some pretty like high concentration plumes coming off the site. We haven't really seen like what you see at other landfills, like really high concentration plumes coming off the site. Radium in particular, given how much we have, it has been a good news story from us that we do see some elevated radium at the edge of the site, but that seems to be dropping off pretty quickly. And while the jury is still out on, you know, exactly what impact, if any, the rim at the site is having, we know that the way that radium as a metal can move in water, some of the conditions in a landfill make it a little easier for radium to become mobile or to dissolve in water. But once you move away from those conditions back into ambient background, the expectation is it's not going to stay dissolved. It's going to come back out. So we do not expect radium from the site to be moving long distances, but that isn't something that we know the answer to. That is something that we're looking very closely at as part of this RI.
Are you looking as well into the potential for the wells that are just a little bit above MCL since, you know, you just listed your expectations? Could it be redux? Could it be something that's causing it to leach from natural bedrock in those wells?
So in the work plan, there is kind of a list of the possible sources that need to be investigated. I know you all have looked at a lot of the documents that have been around, but USGS did a really great groundwater report back in 2014, kind of laying out what these possible sources could be. And that is one of them, that leachate produced from these landfills could be interacting with bedrock or creating other types of chemical conditions that might make radium that's naturally occurring mobile. So all of that, yes, is still very much a part of this RI and very much being looked at carefully by all parties. But I just wanted to try to give some context to these values. Hopefully that
Yeah,
helps.
so just to summarize, so, you know, you could have radium coming from rim. You could have coming non-rim materials, or like Tom said, leaching from the bedrock. Because all rocks, most rocks have uranium and thorium in them. So when those things decay, you get radium. So it could be naturally leaching from bedrock or even the river sediments, which erode the bedrock. Or you could have, naturally occurring, or like she said, the chemical conditions are such that it's leaching the natural radioactive materials in the rock and sediment. So
I think the thing that's
multiple sources.
sure. I think what I would ask of you is and we can talk about it as a group later too, but when we're communicating redox, which is when you have something that's loosening the radium and it's natural radium coming from bedrock that's loosened, I think even though that might be the case and that might be from the bedrock and not from the rim, it's still not a natural thing necessarily that's happening because there's something in the water that shouldn't be that's causing it to leave the bedrock. And I just think that we need to be very careful how we explain that to people.
And just so it's clear, from a CERCLA perspective, both sources can be addressed.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Again, total combined radium and bedrock wells. Primarily, the largest values are at the perimeter of the landfill. And there's a couple of background wells up here in the upper right. We have at 6.84, there's a 5.66. Those two wells, NW602 P4 and 603 P1. Any well that begins with a 600, a 3-digit number, those are the background wells. So again, the RI will address, background water quality, what it means, what is it, so that we can distinguish between it and what may not be background. Next slide, please. All right, so any other questions, I guess, before we move to this? Comments?
Do you want me to just pull it up? Do you want to drive? Or you want me to drive?
Yes.
Is there an idea as to why, is it topography that is causing the water to flow back towards the river? And create the little dots that have the radioactive and dioxane? And then back towards the river here? Or is there another reason, if you go back to maybe 2 more slides, sorry.
This one?
Yep. Is there a reason there's like a literal trail, like a little breadcrumb trail all the way to the river? Is that topography causing some of that leaching down towards the river? Or is that because it's along roads? Is there a reason or a why for that?
Well, I don't think the road has anything to do with it. There is it's gravity that's driving the groundwater flow ultimately from, because you have highlands up here, east of the river, bedrock up high, close to the ground surface. That's why it was mined as a quarry, because it's easy to get to. But then as you go towards the river, basically gravity driven flow takes it to a low point in the river valley, and surface water bodies, whether they be lakes, streams, large rivers, are typically, at least for shallow groundwater, they can be discharged once.
Yeah, so
For
it is
parts of the year, other
topographical.
parts of the year, you can have the reverse happening. If the river is flooding, you can have water going from the river to the aquifer. But most of the time, it's the other way around. But it can vary.
So it is basically concept wise like topography, but not at the surface. It's the way materials are underground, but you can think of it almost like a ramp. Yeah. Where the water is flowing in the downward direction. But that has been which direction the groundwater is flowing and how that changes with river height and over time has been a major part of getting this RI moving forward. So it's a very important question, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and just to touch on one thing, I don't think I fully answered. The breadcrumb trail you referred to, part of that is the pattern. It's so shaped by the groundwater flow direction, especially for 1,4-dioxane, and also where it's coming from. So, if it were in a different corner of the landfill or some other part of Earth City, you would see, perhaps a different geographical distribution of those concentrations.
I think we should also make sure it's clear, this is one singular sample event, right? And these concentrations do change over time, and we've been collecting data from these wells, in some cases for, I think, close to 3 years now. So I don't want people to, it could be deceiving to look at one single sampling event and try to interpret what is happening, how things are moving or whatnot. That's sort of why it's taken as long as it has for us to get to the point where we can have this preliminary RI, because we really have to look at data over time to begin to start answering these questions.
My last question on this was, have you ever had wells that have gone dry? Because you were saying that those create a concentration of the contaminants, and if and when those do go dry, how concentrated do those samples get? And does that impact the kinds of risk or cleanup that those particularly concentrated samples would achieve?
I'll take the last part first. I haven't done that level of detail. I haven't seen as far as, the change in concentration. And yes, I have installed dry wells. It happens sometimes when you're drilling, it's not always easy to see what's saturated, what's wet, unless you have a well right next to it. So sometimes, you put in a dry well. There are other cases too, where typically for these wells, you try to install them so that all of the screen is under the water table. It's totally submerged all the time. But if you're looking at petroleum hydrocarbons that float on the water, you want the well screen to intercept the water table so that you get maximum concentration of things that float. So, the dry wells do happen. And, we have a couple at the site, but for the most part, vast majority of wells have water in them and they're measurable. I saw one hand back there, and then you, sir.
Oh, I might have missed this. The preliminary RI is supposed to come to you guys at the end of June. Is there an estimated time frame for the final?
You were going to ask. As mentioned, the preliminary RI, it's an important milestone.
Absolutely.
So once we've had, and we'll be in a better position to answer your question after we've had a chance to look at it. It depends on a lot of things. You want to see all the types of content that should be an RI report, and depending on the level of revisions, it can take a little longer. But we will open a dialogue with the PRPs. We're trying to make this as efficient as possible. So, the traditional model is you get a report, you write comments, you send it back, they revise it. But we're trying to get ahead of that a little bit by talking earlier before the submission actually comes, so that we can try to be on the same page a little more as to what comes in the door, manage our expectations and everybody's expectations on what should be in the report, and the types of things that should be included.
Yeah, let me try to give a little bit more of a example and hypothetical. When the OU3 work plan was finalized, the PRPs were required to give us a schedule. The nature of this was they had to get the well network in place, and there was always some uncertainty of how long that would take. But once they had the well network in place, they had to have I think at that time they needed to have 8 quarters of groundwater sampling to then feed into an RI. So there is an old schedule out there. It's no longer up to date, but to give you an idea of duration, we could come back. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but
It's okay.
there's that I would characterize as kind of like a best case scenario. And so fast forward to today, one of the big things in this preliminary RI is gonna have to do with, do we have the well network that we need? If there are other wells that need to get installed in certain locations, then that will add time to getting to the RI, because we have to be able to collect data from that well.
Makes sense.
But if the well network is complete, we're on like a shorter path to getting to a final RI. So again, I don't have an estimate. We'll be able to do that better when we have that preliminary. But if you wanted a ballpark figure, like I would call maybe like a best case scenario, we can pull durations from that old schedule to give you an idea of like, if the well network is complete, what type of time frame did the PRPs and EPA think it would take to get to a final RI? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sir,
And yeah, I just wanted to offer, Snay, if you thought it might be helpful to provide some context, based, to maybe better answer Don's, question about well going dry. And this would be context from seeing public drinking water systems in drought years and things like that. So, in this area, if you drill a bedrock well, to significant depth, going dry is not something we see happen. During extreme droughts, think like 2012.
Okay.
We did see shallower, maybe like think livestock watering or irrigation wells, that were going dry or risk of going dry. And so there was a program put in place to sort of, offer funds so these people can drill their wells deeper and get water.
Okay.
In the, river bottom of these major rivers, the Missouri and the Mississippi, I've never seen a well that didn't hit water and never seen one go dry.
Okay. That's
St.
great.
Charles, St. Peter's, O'Fallon pulled millions of gallons a day out of the Mississippi alluvium. Out in St. Charles County, there's a water treatment plant near Weldon, right?
Yep.
Pulling millions of gallons a day out. That water is going to be there, and it's often, like you said, can be filled by another aquifer moving in or from the river moving into the river bottom.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you very much. It's helpful.
It's just remember thinking, back in 53, they had that washout. What's the soil compaction differences based off of that? Could that be having some impact along with the Earth City building?
Yeah, I'm not sure from a that deep under the ground perspective. So like a major flood definitely is going to change the direction and height. It's gonna have a
Right.
lot of impacts on how groundwater is flowing. But in terms of permanently changing the soil conditions or something, I don't know. Yeah. But it's kind of outside my area of
Yeah.
expertise. Yeah.
I just remember, talking about that because it's like from right before that first green dot from the landfill out, they had to do, reconstruction because the flood wiped that all
Yeah.
out. So I didn't know if that made any changes, impacts, whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it will, but you have to look into that and try to get you a better, more educated answer.
Okay.
okay. Let's go to the dashboard real quick. So this is the beta dashboard. So it has some of the same information that you've seen on the regular dashboard for the site. It has well construction. It's.
Or just want to do the slide.
No, no,
Oh,
we
yeah.
want, we want to go to the link.
link.
We want to drive the live version. So this is the beta dashboard. Basically, the big difference is we've added lab results for groundwater. So you can go here, you can pick a well and look through and see what the data are. It's not exhaustive because there's a certain amount of programming and space available. So we sort of picked initially, you know, what would be the most representative, dioxin, you know, arsenic, of course, radium, is on there. So, and this is not the only opportunity you'll get to see this. This is just sort of an initial look at it, you know, for transparency, we want to be able to provide the data so that folks can look at it and ask questions.
I should say this has been kind of a challenge from the perspective of, we know there are certain questions that all of you've been waiting for answers for a long time. We very much would like to answer to those questions as well. And this dashboard and just making data available, it's not gonna be the thing that delivers those answers. But we want to try to keep as much transparency as we can. But we also don't want to overwhelm people with so many well locations, so many different constituents. So we worked on a prototype. We want to start getting it in front of you, hear what you like, what you don't like. Think of this as like, very much like a prototype.
So this is not public yet.
Right, this isn't, we haven't
Okay.
like made this.
This is not public, no.
And like Snake said, there would be
Yeah.
more opportunities, but we wanted to start at this meeting, kind of giving a sense of
Okay.
what we're trying to build.
And yeah, and we can have, you know, smaller group meetings to maybe just focus on this or at the next TCAG, but
Sure.
you know, yeah, like we want to know what's good, what's bad, you know, what you would like to see, what would be helpful. Because we look at this stuff all the time, and so we get sort of tunnel vision and it's not always apparent to us what would be most helpful to the community at large. So so you land here, kind of as a little explanation of what's what. And like I said, the new addition is down here in the bottom left, the lab results. So let's go there. So it takes you to a map you've seen before. These are the current set of wells that are in this database. I don't think everything is in here yet. It's, you know, we're just testing it, taking it for a spin, kicking the tires. There's a table down here. So these arrows here, you know, you can expand if you're more of a table person.
I'd have to select a well first.
Yeah, no, it's usually, I don't know, it's not working. There it is. Okay. You could go look at it. So, but let's go look at the, I'm more of a graphical guy, so I like the picture. So we're going to go there for now. So you can click on a well and let's see what we have. Here's a background well. Let's take a look at that. It's a little slow. So it pulls up the basic information you've seen before, the location, screen values, how the well is constructed, what formation it's in, all that sort of thing. And then down here, lab results. So it starts with the most recent, looks like we have from April of 25. It has validated data. There have been more sampling events since May 2025, but they just haven't made it into here yet because either they're validated, haven't been validated, or we just got it. So, so like each location has multiple wells, right? They're screened at different depths. So you can click between wells, 603 P1. So P1 is usually shallow. It goes P1, 2, 3, 4, higher number, deeper well. And it'll tell you whether it's in bedrock or alluvium, the river sediment. You can scroll through and take a look.
I should say, if this is even something that you want, you can also tell us that. I have been, you know, Chris and Stan have been talking about this for a long time. We've made a lot of information about the rim sampling available on a dashboard. This is just, I would say, several more layers complicated. And we definitely don't want to frustrate people, but we want to provide something. But we prefer it to be something you want. But anyway, go ahead, Snake. Didn't mean to interrupt.
So, so once you're here, let's see. Yeah, you can switch. 603 P1. Let's take a look. Let's look at radio. Again, this is one of those background wells. So in May of 25, it was 5.6. So it provides a way of looking, so like I said, the newest one's at the top, and then this one has a total of 54 results. Those results include duplicate samples, they collect a duplicate sample in the field to do some QA/QC on, to make sure that, we have confidence in our numbers and the analytical method. Some of them, for example, like radium and for the metals like arsenic, there's both filtered and non-filtered values that are collected. Yes.
Does this show the history of samples as you go down? Like you would be able to pull whatever the first sample result is there and be able to compare it to the most recent sample?
I believe this goes all the way back to the start of time for the well. Now that's going to eventually become a little less manageable for the wells that have been sampled for a long time. But like I said, it's not all the analytes. It's just the subset that we think is most informative, and it should cover all of the validated data. So, for example, this well, it goes all the way back to August 2022.
So when you're saying you pulled the most validated data sets, when you repeatedly saw a similar data set repeat, that's what goes in? You're not putting like the outlier sets in there?
Nothing's filtered out of what's in this.
Oh, okay,
All
so it
it
is wrong.
Even the duplicates are in here, like our QA samples,
Yeah.
which, that might be too much, but
Uh,
for now, this is all of it.
The only caveat is sometimes data are rejected. You get it
Yeah.
back and you look at it, you get the lab report, and maybe they missed some of their QA/QC targets, and you say, well, this number's not good. It doesn't happen very often. The vast majority of the data are acceptable, and they may have some sort of qualifier added to it, which tells you, oh, this is estimated. So we think the number, it's there, but it's estimated because there's a little more uncertainty in the exact concentration of that number.
So first of all, this is ultimate transparency. So bravo, right? Like, and the people in this room that are like data nerds, like we're geeking out over it. But I'm also thinking, and I know, Tom, I can see it in your face, you're thinking it too. That's us.
Yeah.
That are in front of this all the time, that have spent 13 years combing over this and understand how to read it. To me, you put this up, I mean, I can think you guys, can you think of a bunch of people getting on going, oh my God, and calling and not understanding? So what I think is, this is great. I just think we have to figure out the timing of when this comes out, because if you're going to do that, the remedial investigation, the preliminary one in June, maybe it makes sense to come out with that one. And then this comes out as a way to fill in those gaps that you had talked about. And because I'm assuming you guys, I know Jess, you had said that you guys are aiming at some point on having another public meeting.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that.
Okay, because I think that would be a good time then to figure out a way. I don't even know if it's a short clip that they have to watch before they get on here to understand what it means.
Yeah.
Because we just don't have the capacity. I mean, right off the bat, I'm thinking the firehouse, you guys are gonna get phone calls from people. We're gonna be sitting at sports games with parents asking questions like, hey, look at this blue dot. What's that mean?
Some kind of glossary that explains like
Yeah.
what things are, what these levels are, is this? Cause otherwise it's gonna be.
Yeah, so maybe there's like a short section on that public meeting that goes over this, that explains what's happened, what's coming. And then that's kind of the public launch of this. or
Yeah,
something
it's
like that.
great though.
Yeah, it's ultimate transparency.
Yeah, it's just the beginning. So yeah, this is valuable
Ultimate.
input.
What we wanted to know.
Obviously, I'm loving all the nerdy things here, but I could definitely see the overwhelm possibility. You may be able to direct people's eyeballs with some simple highlighting, like just literally highlight the most relevant and recent sample data points that you want people to have their eyeballs on, which most recent is probably the most important, and you can even have a secondary drop down that says previous data, and that way if eyeballs are looking and they're learning and they're gonna, they'll be able to go to the colorful
Data.
things first and then
Data.
deal with the data that's to come.
Or just ones that are over the limit.
Yeah.
Other people don't really care what's
Historical.
not over the
Or maybe
limit.
provide a way to filter, say, show me
Show me the bad stuff.
radium above 5,
Bad stuff.
kind of thing.
Judy has a question.
That's good. That's good.
Do you have user data from your original dashboard? And you know how many people looked at it, are still looking at it, and what we looked at most?
I know we look at and can track the number of like interactions. I don't know if we had it down to the level of what people. I don't think. But we do know like how many people visit our dashboard site. Been tracking that since like 2022 or so.
Is it a lot of us? Is it some of us?
It ebbs and flows. Like when we first put it out, it's definitely the highest. But then when we have, certain news or we put out a website update that is maybe talking about an update to the scheduled dashboard, an update to the like rain dashboard. We get a pickup of people going to check what it is that we're talking about. I think that's the general trend, right, Jess?
Well, if there's nothing else that people want to see right now, we can
I think the
move on.
feedback on the preliminary RI and thinking about timing, at least after that, makes a lot of sense. We may have better insight into things that like are important to show at that point, like what we really want to tell people, because that's going to be a big and technical document. This may be a way for us to help digest some of what's in there. We can sort of match what we're trying to draw attention to with things and that report. So. Right.
Does anybody need a quick break before we jump into OU1, which is the soil?
I think you can think. Yes. It's back in full screen. Okay, well, that was a lot of technical. And we could definitely. I could very easily spend the rest of our time today talking about confirmation sampling on its own. I'm not gonna do that. Because I think the bigger topic is where we're at, what we have left to do, and when we're gonna get to RA. So this is focused on that. There are a couple of things I want to point out about confirmation sampling, because it provides, I think, some very needed context about the work that's left and what's going to happen over the next like 6 months or so. So I'll cover that, but we will get to the same set of slides the last time we were here, all the way through to our expectations for RA. Remedial action. Go ahead, Steve. So just real quick, the reason that I am really excited that we're done confirmation sampling and that this is something that we did now is because it really does make things much better during remedial action. It should go faster. There should be it should be easier to control dust and manage any kind of contamination while the PRPs are doing the excavation and constructing the cover. So I just wanted to touch on that. There are a lot of benefits. We're done this, and now we're looking to the next steps. Go ahead, Sneh. So I have 3 quick map slides here, but I'm not gonna go into a lot of detail. It's just to provide a little context when we start talking about how many confirmation samples were collected. I think this will help explain why. So this is a map from the revised excavation plan that was approved. EPA approved it back in the beginning of 2024. All I want to point out about this is area 1, is that what the PRPs were proposing is exact to the foot, like This is the hole in the ground where the rim is that needs to come out. This exact thing. So in the record of decision amendment from 2018, we had a requirement that doing a model to come up with that is fine, but you have to confirm it because no model is perfect. So the requirement to do confirmation sampling is in the record of decision, but I wanted to highlight, this is how specific that excavation plan is, right?
Wow.
These kind of individual spread out islands, it's here, it's there. Area 2 is the much larger excavation, but I wanted to put this up because it kind of shows these individual yellow areas that were proposed for that excavation plan.
Tom, is this all, what's the word I'm looking for, like GPS coordinates?
Oh, yes. Yes,
That's
there's a
so cool.
3D model in space, which I could actually pull up before we leave. But this is all mapped out in the real world, exactly where this is.
Well done.
Yep.
Well
Okay,
done.
so go to the next one. So these are the maps when we came to the open house in 2024 that we brought with that revised excavation plan. This just takes those shapes and looks at the PRP's design for the actual hole in the ground that they have to dig to get that rim out. Same thing, individual areas, etc. Go ahead. Go to the next one. So this is a map from the confirmation sampling plan, same areas. Requirements came from the record of decision amendment that when they did confirmation sampling, they could do averages, but they couldn't be over areas any larger than 2,000 square meters. They ended up proposing most of their decision units are much smaller than that. But each one of those decision units had to have multiple samples, not only like around the edges to see whether things needed to step out or expand like laterally, but also through the top and bottom to see whether, you know, like we need to go 1 or 2 feet deeper, etc. So all around the shape is where this confirmation sampling had to go. All right, so to the next slide. So all of that was to provide some context about these upper bullets. I don't even have the final number of samples that were collected. It just got sent to me this morning. They finished up the last of their drilling field work February 6th. But when they did that field work, there were some samples that they collected at deeper depths and closer to the surface, so that if one of those confirmation samples was above the threshold, they could just go back, grab that sample and send it to the lab. So between February 6th and today, there were a small number, I don't know how many, 6, 7, 8, that they had to go back to the site and grab and send to the lab. So we will update the dashboard with the final sample count. It's not a lot more than 1,100, but I wanted to go through that quickly. This is probably the most sampling that's been done at the site in this short amount of time since I've been working on it. They got out there in July and it was like practically nonstop drilling every day. There were a few points in time where we had to take a break because they had to get lab data back to know whether and where they needed to go back out. But pretty much since July, this has been a nonstop field effort. So a couple of things. This, if you saw from that map, we were going right around the PRP's proposed excavation. So this sampling hasn't identified any new areas of rim. This was all focused right around those areas that were proposed to excavate where we already knew rim was. So the PRPs are taking, oh yeah,
Can you take Mayor's question? real
oh,
quick?
sure, sorry.
So you're saying, no entirely new areas since July of last year till now?
Correct.
Okay.
Now we're gonna, I kind of skimmed over this. I should go back, but approximately 500 of these samples were step outs. That doesn't mean 500 separate locations. I've got a map here, which I've tried not to get too detailed here, but if anyone's curious, we can look at after. Some cases they had to step out 3 or 4 times, but their step out distance was very short, 10 feet, 15 feet. So stepping out 3 or 4 times in some cases only meant going out like 30 feet. But that's why there's so many of these samples. This was very precise sampling, trying to really hone in on what needed to be excavated to comply with that record of decision method. So with all that data, the PRPs are taking it and redoing, they're bumping out the excavations where the data had hits, and they're gonna be remaking those maps that we went over in 2024. But once they do that, there's other engineering work and important work that kind of comes from that. Once you know what hole you're digging, then you know how much backfill you need to fill it back up. Once you have the engineering for filling the holes back up, then they know what material they need to regrade the surface to make it appropriate for that final cover. Because right now, the topography is not appropriate for a final landfill cover. So they have to do this in that sequence of steps. What's coming out? What do we need to put back in? What do we need to add on top? And then they'll design the cover to go on that appropriate surface. And then the last step is we need to make sure this cover lasts essentially forever. There's a lot of stormwater infrastructure and design that has to be put on top of that cover. So every time it rains, we don't get erosion in the cover and we feed the right amount of water to the right places. So over the next 4 or 5 months, their engineering team is going to be very busy doing all of that. They did it all once when they submitted the 90% design. But now they have to do it essentially again to incorporate this confirmation sample. So that's really, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna ask if you wouldn't mind backing up to, there's a certain amount of square footage that each sample had to abide by. It was about like 2 slides ago. What was that square footage that each sample needed to be?
The requirement in the record of decision was that when they were deciding on an area that they could collect multiple samples from to average to come to a decision about whether it couldn't be greater than 2,000 square meters. And that's about 1/2 acre. And that value comes essentially from MARSM, the multi-agency. There's a lot in that. It's a multi-agency guidance on how to assess RAD sites. And the 1/2 acre is the maximum size allowed for the most contaminated type of decision unit. Now, like I said, most of their decision units were much smaller than that in this case, and that kind of why there's so many samples collected.
Tim, what depth were the samples taken?
Anywhere from the surface to 16 feet. It changes based on where the proposed excavation was. They were always going to that foot above, below, or outside, but that's generally the depth where the samples were. Right.
Is this, we were just talking, does this allow them to calculate overburden when they're
Yeah.
going in to remove so that you
Yes.
have an approximate amount of that?
It's, and that's a major important part of this process. Yeah, what type of overburden they're gonna be encountering, because they're gonna put that overburden back in the hole.
Right.
But obviously that won't be enough to fill the hole.
Yep.
And there are steep slopes around the outside edge. I know almost everyone in this room probably has been out to the site. You see those steep trees. So there's definitely going to be major regrading around those edges to bring those slopes down to no more than 25%. So that will provide some material to fill low areas. But they will definitely be bringing in more fill to get this topographical surface to the height it needs to be to build this cover.
Okay.
What is that about?
Great question. I'm gonna try to say what we have on our dashboard because we have a great explanation for this, but all a step out is they go and they collect a sample, and the expectation or what they want the outcome of that sample to be is that there won't be contamination there that has to be done. If that sample does find contamination, then the requirement in the plan is they have to go further out could be 10 feet to the east, or it could be like a foot above. And essentially the excavation is going to be expanded to that point. And now they're checking to see if the contamination is at that step out location. And they keep doing that, right? Like moving further out until they get the sample clean. All right, next slide. Okay, after this, we're gonna get to schedule. I'm not gonna go through all these boxes. The main point here is that since we last met, there's been quite a bit of work that is now complete, including as of last Friday, the pre-excavation confirmation sampling.
Yeah.
Which is great. So what does that mean? What do we have left? Well, in October, the PRPs sent us part of the 100% design. Pretty significant part of it. Basically, anything that doesn't have to do with those things that we just talked about that could be impacted by confirmation sampling and excavation. But we have that in our house. We're reviewing it right now. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. The IER addendum 9 and 10. So these are basically the areas in the ditches on the east side of the site between the landfill and St. Charles Rock Road. There are two places where rim was found like outside of the landfill in stormwater pathways. So we're very close to getting these approved and putting them on the page, but these will show the extent of rim in those two areas. And we need to have an extent of rim, obviously, so we can complete the design here. So we're very close. I think you had asked Don when Jess called you, does completing the confirmation sampling fieldwork mean that we have found all the rim? Yes, for this design, getting this done means that we now have all the rim information we need to make sure what needs to get excavated is excavated and where the cover needs to go for anything that's going to stay at the site. But I did want to point out these two pieces because we haven't until recently even had information from the PRPs about what that extent of rim is. And very soon we're going to be able to put that out so you all can see that.
What's very close?
Probably the next 30 days. I literally was on the phone with the OU1 team on Friday, and we were talking about what we would need in terms of changes to the drafts we have. And it's whenever I put a document out for you all to look at, I want it to be clear what the basis for coming to a conclusion about where rim is. What data, or if there's other things, historical area, imagery, etc. I want all that to be, doesn't need to be a book, but I want it to be very clear about how that line on that map was drawn or established. So there were a few things that I wanted them to add, minor tweaks to make sure that that was clear, and they're doing that now. So it's somewhat dependent on when they get it back to me, but it should not be long.
Are we gonna gasp at that news?
No, we've gone over the data in 2024, so and
Okay.
it's on the mapping dashboard.
Okay.
But in terms of having an actual yes, where is the extent? That's what this piece fills in.
Okay.
And that's gonna set up what they will ultimately excavate, right, as part of the design. So it is kind of linked to excavation, but yeah, we're very close here.
Okay.
So that leaves the final piece. And that's essentially what we talked about, that revised excavation plan, updated grading plans, et cetera. And then EPA has a chance to review that. As long as we're okay with it and we approve it, the design is complete at that point. So let's go to the next slide. We can talk a little bit more about schedule. And I'm sorry, there's so many words on the slide, but I really wanted to make sure you all had an understanding of not only the importance of these last two steps, there's a lot of critical design work happening, But
That's what I wanted to see.
I wanted to give some context of what these timeframes are for, like what work is happening over this. So I'll just start at the top. The statement of work that the PRPs have to follow per our order with them is that data validation has to be completed 45 days after they got the last lab report. That was last Friday. So April 24th, they have to complete validating all that data. They validated a large chunk of it. They've been doing it to go, but that triggers 150 days to complete all of that revised excavation plan, updated regrading plans, final cover extent, stormwater infrastructure, all really the meat of the design. They will submit that to us basically on that date. Now, I want us to complete our review of this very quickly. I want this design to be done. But Chris and I we want it to be done right. So we are going to do everything we can between now and then to make it easier for us to review that. The PRPs give us the data. Eventually, we will be able to make all the confirmation sampling data available online. But we're looking at that data now to have an idea of what types of changes to the excavation plan so that we're not entirely blind when this document comes from us.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right? But there is going to be a lot of technical work there. So, and it's not just Chris and I. We have engineers from Leidos. We have engineers from the Corps of Engineers in the Kansas City office. There'll be some other EPA internal experts. So there's a team of us ready to jump on this as soon as it comes in.
Do you have is that enough?
Right now it is, but if I come up with something that I need that I don't have, I'm definitely gonna raise it. And right now, the commitment from everyone at EPA is to get us the resources that we
Okay,
need.
okay.
But right now, we have the resources we need for this. There are a couple of things, though, that we talked about in the press release that from Administrator Zeldin last year. And something that we are looking to add to our ranks soon is landfill expertise. I'm a nuclear engineer, so I know very little personally about landfill
All right, Matt.
design. Right? So we want to add someone very close to us
All right, Matt.
that can help us add that expertise. We have some of it with our contractors, but we want to get them embedded and like very close with us working towards the end. That's a resource that we are looking into. Is there anything else? I guess I just wanted to say, in terms of when is it done, there is some, it will depend on how good a quality we get. But our expectation is that the design will be done by the end of the year.
Okay,
With the September date to us, it will be definitely aggressive on our end, but it is possible that we could be done by the end of the year.
Do you need that landfill expert as part of that to be done by the end of the year?
It would be ideal, but it's not like a must have. Really, what it's doing for us is, and I have an updated slide on OU2. But I didn't want to spend a lot of time talking about OU2 today, but these two designs need to progress together. OU2 basically covers the southern half of the inactive sanitary landfill, which is down here on the site. It's one landfill. Part of it has rim in it, part of it doesn't. So the covers have to transition.
Mm-hmm.
So the designs have to progress at least enough so that that transition between both designers can be fully worked out. We're on that path now. The OU2 design is progressing,
Okay.
but it would definitely be helpful to us to have another person that has some technical expertise to keep that moving along. So that's really where that landfill expert is coming in. We can definitely use them on the OU1 side. But it allows mainly myself and Chris to be able to focus a little bit more on OU1 and still have that OU2 progress.
Okay. Is there nobody from like the state of Missouri, like our DNR folks?
Oh, they are total, and so I think I've said this before, but we have a call every other Wednesday.
Okay.
With the whole, with departments.
It feels like this. It feels like y'all are like really connected and.
Yeah, they know exactly what's going on with Westlake, and they do provide a lot of that landfilling support. It's their regs.
Yep.
That are driving the design in some cases for these features. So they are, they know their regs better than we do, obviously. But yeah, we're Sean Monks and the solid waste department, Ryan Seaball, and folks from his team. We're talking constantly about Westlake.
Awesome.
Okay, I think I've covered. Are there any questions about getting to the end of the RD?
Oh,
Okay.
I don't see any.
Let's go to the next one. So I don't have as definitive of a picture for RA, because until we have an order that lays out what the requirements are for the PRPs, there isn't a definite. However, there is a projected schedule in the 100% design. There was one in the 90% design, which we have posted, but it's been revised slightly. It's a little bit more informed in the 100% design. So this is a slide I made based on what the latest PRP projection is. Because remember, it's the PRPs will be doing all of this work. Obviously, we have to have an order and make sure they do it correctly, but they'll be doing this. So the first step after an order is in place is to hire a contractor. This is a big project. So that contracting process is not a small feat. However, the PRPs have told us that they are working on that even now. But a critical point in that is getting to the end of the design. They want to be able to hand that PE stamped design, put that out there when they ask for contractors to bid on this project. But I wanted to point out that that isn't something that's waiting until we get this order finalized. But getting to the end of RD is an important part of moving this piece forward.
Okay.
So then, like all of our orders, there's an initial work plan phase. It's a little bit more detailed on what the requirements are in the order. Going to have things like a schedule for construction and all of that. The PRPs have proposed. I believe we can start construction before we get every single fine detail for the remedial action finalized in a work plan.
So like site.
It's a pretty important milestone for us. And start construction at this site is actually several things, like actual earth moving equipment and building structures, etc., that have to be in place before we really get to hauling off rim to a facility. Another thing that's happening between here is when they select this contractor, part of that is going to be deciding on a disposal facility. Once a specific disposal facility, or could be multiple disposal facilities, are selected, they may have specific requirements that they want before stuff can be shipped. So that's all something that has to work through this process. So in the meantime, the plan is to get started constructing like where we're going to stage filled containers until they either leave to drive to a disposal facility, like via truck, or to go to a rail loading facility and get there via rail. Establishing decontamination areas and contamination control zones They're gonna need a fill stockpile area, right? Because like I said, when they go to fill those holes up, they will need extra material to actually bring. So they're gonna need to be bringing in that dirt so that as soon as they dig the hole, they can put something back in it immediately. They're gonna need cover material, a laydown area for that. So there's very specific types of soil and rock and a geomembrane that they're gonna have to have on stock. So once they start rolling that cover out, they can keep going. They don't want to stop in the middle of that. So there's gonna have to be an area for that. Anytime you have a big construction project, you're gonna end up with water that comes in contact with waste. There's a lot of requirements in the design about how to keep that, containerize it so it doesn't run off the site. But they have to do something with it that meets all the regulations. There's a couple of different options. One of them is they could decide to build a treatment plant on site, and they talked about this in the design.
Don't we already have one?
This is going to be specific to the leachate, and I don't want to get too detailed here, but during the design investigation, they collected leachate samples and they've done a treatability study. The 90% version of that is on our website. We have an updated version of that with an addendum. But that goes through a specific like treatment train set of steps to address the contaminants in the leachate that they will be encountering. So it's specific to that. And all the specs for that water treatment plant are in the 100% design. I put an asterisk here though, because there are other ways. They could discharge to like MSD, but they would have to work through the process of getting a permit for that. And either one is an option, and they don't know yet what the RA contractor is gonna want to do. But they have all the specs for building that contact water treatment plant, and exactly what the RA contractor would have to do. If they wanted to go that option of treating on site.
How many special discharge permits is MSD allowed to issue related to these type of sites in North County?
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay, I didn't know if there's like a, with DNR in the room, if there's a cap on the amount of radioactive leachate material that can be put back into MSD water control, or if there is a certain percentage of contaminants or contaminant materials.
All I can tell you is they've spent quite a bit of effort in this design to come up with a contact water treatment plant. If they didn't think that was a likely avenue here, they would not have, gone down. So a full design of this treatment plant is in the 100%. Eventually, I'll be able to, give access to that.
Could they also tap into this potential water treatment plant to treat the groundwater for a potential solution for OU3 at some point?
Can't rule it out, but we're still pretty far away from like what even a treatment for groundwater would need to be.
Okay.
But if the infrastructure is there and useful and they decide it fits with
Why
what the
not?
situation.
Okay.
So the main conclusion here is we still are working with the goal of getting to this construction start by the end of 2027. That is still what we are working towards. But I hope it's clear from what I went through. There are several things that have to occur that I certainly don't have direct control over. And there are some things that we just don't have all the final information about. And so it's not impossible to start construction by 2027 by any means.
No, you should.
But it isn't something that I could guarantee. But I wanted to at least explain how
You need to ask.
we are trying to do everything we can to expedite this process and get to that point. Yeah, go ahead.
I know you probably don't know the answer to this question. The enforceable order.
Yeah.
Who gets to start the enforceable order?
Start it.
So if PRPs don't sign on that dotted line, when does that time start to
Yeah, I can,
the 120 days or whatever it was that,
right, so it is still our expectation, my expectation, our attorney's expectation, that an agreement will be reached by the end of design. That's what we are.
What's that time? Okay, so.
it's
end
our
of-
expectation too.
End
Yeah,
of the year.
end of this year. I can't obviously go into any kind of details about active negotiations. I can say that at any surplus site, another enforcement tool in EPA's toolbox is a unilateral order.
Uh-huh.
I
Right.
know
Triple
we've had, I think
baby.
TJ came with one of our attorneys a few years back. and We
Right.
kind of talked through that in detail.
Mhm.
So EPA always has the option to issue an order to the PRPs and to try to get things going. But it is our expectation that an agreement will be reached by the time this design is done.
Okay. So just to be on our toes on this end, what would we prepare for? Let's say that doesn't happen. What do we prepare for to start that ball in motion if it doesn't get signed?
Our attorneys would do that.
So when would that start?
I think it's pretty seamless. You know, it's with, they would talk with DOJ about the appropriate time to start that, and they would start it from their end.
Thank
You know,
you.
depending on how well they felt everything was going, if it was, you know,
Yeah, I'm
there was a way
gonna,
to make agreements, or whether they just really needed to push.
Okay.
at any site, the site attorney, the EPA team, we're always looking at all the options. So I'm not saying anything specific here, but for any surplus site, it's not like only look at one option and then if that fails, go back to the drawing board. They're always looking at all the options and weighing like when to go from one to the other, or what circumstances another tool is needed, et cetera. Is that
Yes,
okay?
yes,
And it feels like that a little bit, like this feels like,
it's different.
yeah, it feels like this time you doing this presentation, this is different. We're seeing days and we're seeing measures in place and you're being upfront about, hey, if I don't like it, I'm gonna stall it a little bit till I get it right, which I appreciate. And you know, as much as we want to meet that timeline goal, I do trust you, Tom. If you see something in this you don't like, we get it. We would, yeah.
It has to
Count
be
on
done
you.
right. It has to be done safely. I want to meet that deadline so badly.
I know you do.
Been working on this design for a long time. It's
No,
time
you all
to
do.
bring it to a close. They have great engineers working on this. They're capable of doing this. So it's not an expertise or a resource issue. We just have to get on the same page and get this done. So the last thing I wanted to mention, another future community engagement activity. I know you all have been interested, like when we put out the 90% design, the different things and requirements in the design to keep the community safe and protected while remedial action is ongoing. I am hoping a couple weeks away from getting comments out on the air monitoring plan for during the remedial action. There's still a decent amount of technical work between the PRPs and us to get that where it needs to be. But I wanted to put out that, especially once we get that plan out there, there is all this time between, 2-3 weeks from now and getting to this point where that air monitoring plan would start to become really important. So there's time to ask and get input about how data gets presented, what you see in a report, trying to make that report understandable to the community, et cetera. We usually don't have the option to get a lot of back and forth input, but for this, we're going to. And I know it's something that you guys are very interested in. So we want to seek that feedback. Obviously, it's gonna take a little bit to kind of explain what can be done, what is the universe of air monitoring really look like? And once you and other folks in the community have a better sense of that, could really then provide in meaningful feedback. So Jess and I have been talking about like what options to get us there. And it could be Carmen. She could at some point give a presentation. We could come back and go through what this air monitoring plan looks like at another TCAG meeting or whatever you would like. But between now and the end of the year, we're interested in starting those conversations, giving you guys a heads up of what the air monitoring program is going to look like and try to get meaningful reporting like ordered up when we get there.
Not trying to give our wonderful fire department more to do, but I will say, when it comes to the first line of defense barrier, I appreciate you guys thinking ahead about that because you're right. This is where everybody's going to be focused. I really do recommend that you get with Pattonville Fire Department because I think that, it's going to be a combination of you guys along with the state, along with the local first responders coming together and creating this little bit of trust, right? Because, you guys are in Lenexa, you're local, but some of the DNR are not. Pattonville's right down the street. It's going to come down to if they're comfortable with what they're seeing leaving the site and in the community where their kids and their grandkids play, everybody else is going to be. Does that make sense? Or like right here in Bridgeton where, your police officers and your mayor work, So I think, yeah, let's think on that and let's get together and create a very small subcategory of this and put that together.
Right.
Because I think that, when it comes to asking questions about air monitoring too, you can train people, but I think it might also be better if, they feel comfortable enough to call EPA, but they also feel comfortable enough to call somebody locally.
Sure.
Yeah.
We have ongoing, Chief, we have the quarterly first responder meetings. I guess what I'm saying is we have the groundwork for that relationship already, and we keep trying to keep everyone informed about what's going on, what's about to come. But yeah, we should be able to parlay that right into these discussions about air monitoring. And you all are going to have a little bit more expertise than the average person in the community. So yeah, feedback from you all would be very appreciated.
Not trying to volunteer the fire department, but
Anytime our executives, it's been Crystal Hilton bring in some bottles of water or something like one. They may not be cold, but well, at least they're with.
Thank you. Thanks to you.
thank you.
On that list, can you also add the health department, because we get
Yes.
calls about
Of course.
dust leaving sites all the time, and I can only see someone calling us with those questions.
Great point.
Makes sense.
Absolutely.
The last thing I wanted to mention, because I said it earlier and you had asked, our next major public meeting. So when the design is complete, first circle, we have to do a major public meeting. So, tentatively, we're thinking December, January. But go back a couple of slides, Nick, or just one slide is fine. The exact time for that does depend on this piece here.
Mhm.
But that is sort of when we're thinking. So I guess the other thing to bring up there is, to the extent you all want something ahead of that, whether it's from Carmen or another TCAG from us, yeah, keep that in mind, get with Jess, let us know what you need. But that's the kind of time frame that we are working towards.
Might be neat. I'm not asking you to do more, but maybe like Jess, maybe thinking out loud before everybody has a big public meeting and all the EPA folk come in. Maybe we can update the website and we can kind of do maybe with Jess a couple nights at the library, meet the EPA, meet the team. And maybe we can have like the health department or a couple people out, just to get people used to seeing faces and names before they get to the big meeting,
Sure.
It's just a way of building trust and making this cleanup a little bit more intimate and friendly for the community.
Yeah.
Okay. This is exciting.
So we do have an OU2 slide. I'll just, go ahead and do a couple more. I'll flash it on the screen, but the big point is just, like I said before, the two designs really need to progress to some degree together so we can get those transitions covered, but we want OU2 locked in. But I did want to touch on a couple things that are likely gonna occur at the site, like later this spring or early summer. EPA is about to approve a proposal to collect like 3 borings on the western side of the ISL, really geotechnical sampling. It's gonna help finalize the design of how that steeper slope will be regraded. So that there'll be actual drilling for that in a month, 2-3 months, something like that. And then they've also given us a proposal to help resolve the issues with landfill gas in the subsurface on the west side of the ISL. Several things have happened over the last couple of years. They installed basically some pipes that go into the ground and can collect that gas. And they pull it out when the wind blows. It turns a turbine and that creates a vacuum and it pulls gas out. So they tried that. We monitored. There were some impacts, but it wasn't bringing the gas levels all the way down to where they needed to. So they added solar panels to those so that they could like run even when the wind wasn't blowing. Some improvement, but again, not getting to the levels that they need to. So the proposal that we're looking at from them now is something called an interceptor trench, which is basically like a horizontal pipe under the ground with holes in it. So that all along that path, as the gas migrates, it can get in that pipe, and then there'll be outlets along the way that allow the gas to vent. So it doesn't keep traveling underneath the surface. And that's it for OU2. If I'm expecting we're gonna approve that project, that's probably something that would happen this year, I think, right, Matt? Yeah. It's cool. That's it. That's the update.
Does anybody have any questions? Or you guys? If not, we can close out the meeting and let everybody go. We'll see. All right, good meeting.
Yep.
Motion to close the technical committee and move it back to the CAG. Okay, tech committee is closed, move back to the CAG. Now you gotta make a motion to close the CAG.
Motion to close the CAG.
Six. Okay, CAG is closed.